Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Sex Education, Season 4, Episode 1. In this episode, y'all, I got so drawn into this. This is a 55-minute long episode, and it felt somehow movie length in that it packed so much in, but it seemed to also go by really fast. I am having high hopes for this season already. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Ashleigh for commissioning this episode. Ashleigh is here in the chat. And also, Stacy is here. Hello to both of you. Thank you for joining me. Ashley says, hope you've been doing well. How's Pippin getting on? Pippin is great. Thank you so much for asking. He went to daycare today, so he is with his pops who went to pick him up. Because yesterday we had a rainy day, and it was extremely boring for him. So I decided to let him go somewhere where he could just play all day long and get some of the wiggles out. So you guys, this first episode, I want to just really give them some props for the recap that they did at the beginning, which I needed extremely badly. I didn't realize how much I had forgotten by the time this season started. So, and forgive me, everybody, I am definitely going to need help with names again because it has been a while since I covered this. So I remember our mains, but there are going to be a lot of side people who I lose track of. Please forgive me and know that I'll be back on my shit shortly. It's just I'm covering so many things that it's not a surprise that I lose track of stuff eventually. But the way that they do the recap, for those who don't remember or maybe who skipped it, they have Otis's mother, Jean. She behaves as if she's reading out of a dossier about what went down. And some of it she talks about as if she in character saw it happen. And then there are some things that she'll mention that she's like, I don't think I was there for that. And her acting in it is just so great. It's very matter of fact, but also occasionally she'll just be like, yikes. And it was exactly what I needed. It was one of the better recaps I've ever seen, to be honest. And I don't know if this is going to be something that in universe we'll find out that she knows about some of this stuff now. I think the thing she says she wasn't there for was the poop hitting the windshield of that car. I forgot about how Jackson just says I'm just a tube, but oh god, that just every time it just resonates so hard. But yeah, I just really thought this was well done. But we start off in the US, as it turns out, and we're with Maeve in the library who is writing a paper and trying to focus. It seems like she's doing pretty well. She's writing something about the Bronte sisters. And then she gets sort of distracted and sees this couple that is making out in the stacks of the library. And it seems like they are about to straight up fuck in the library, which is a risk, but also I know myself in school would have been willing to do this because I was just a complete horn dog. And there were just times where it was I could not wait. I could not handle it. So yeah, the two of them, it is getting hot and heavy, and she is watching them and clearly just getting turned on. And she starts texting Otis and is just so what's going on? And as she leaves to go back to her room, she just keeps on passing couples who are making out and feeling each other up. There's even a guy whose little chihuahua is humping a soccer ball. And when she gets to her dorm room, the room does not open, and it turns out her roommate's in there forgot to put a sock on the door, but locked it, and hustles back into bed, leaving Maeve in the hallway. And I am assuming that she had been going to go jerk off, but just gets foiled. I have often wondered about this because I have never lived in this sort of roommate situation, right? I have never shared... Well, that's not true. That's not true. I did share a room when I was in my first year in Carnegie Mellon. I was put in a 2-bedroom apartment off campus, and there was one girl who got the single bedroom, and then me and the other girl shared the other bedroom. And but that girl was not sexually involved with anybody. So I never ran into the whole like, hey, I need my privacy thing. And the only time that I ever had sex while I was like at school, we did it in the living room while the two of them were asleep in bed. So it was not even a thing. So I'm really curious, like, you know, this girl comes to the door, she's wrapped in a sheet, she puts the sock on the door, is like, sorry, closes the door in Maeve's face. And I'm like, yeah, but what if you like need to run in to get something? Or like, what if, you know, like there's like all kinds of things. And I know that is just something you have to work out, but I feel like I would be so consumed with guilt at keeping somebody out of a space that we shared together so that I could fuck that I don't know if I could ever actually do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that it is actually rude. It's a fair expectation in a shared space, but I would feel rude about it. But anyway, back to the point. Maeve is texting Otis while the sex inside her room gets louder and louder and louder. And she looks around, realizes that the entire hall is empty, and she just decides to take a tit pic and send it to Otis, who we see him sit up straight in bed and just be like, oh my God, what do I do? And the text she follows it up with is, your turn. So we see this amazing sequence, I loved this so much, of Otis attempting to take like dick pic photos and adjusting over and over again. At first he's just trying to like get his position right, and then he's trying to shave. At first it's just a trim, but then it gets down to actual shaving. And I kept thinking as I was watching this, is he even hard? He's taking these photos like immediately after shaving. And we find out later he is not hard. And the reason for that is that he thought being hard was too aggressive, which I'm like, sweetie, that's the point. The aggression of being aroused is what she's looking for right now. That's the point of it. But he's trying to like be passive while sending dick pics, which is just, you cannot do that. Like, it doesn't work. And also for the record, I am a girl who really prefers pubic hair. Do not shave. Don't do it. I understand that for some people, it's like, it's just part of their habit, and if that's their thing, fine. But if you are going to be doing that for me, I would really rather you didn't. I am into body hair. I like hairy chests. I like hairy crotch. I like hairy armpits. I am not the one that you're going to be seducing by shaving your sack. It's just not for me. I don't like the look. And I wanted him to like ask her preferences before he went through all of this. But I also don't remember, and like, let me know, guys, have the two of them ever had any like real sexual encounter besides kissing? Was it just a kiss that they ever shared? I'm assuming that's all there was, if I'm not mistaken. So they have not had this conversation, you know, about what it was that she'd prefer. And it's all a moot point anyway, because we find out that he took all these photos and then he never sent any, and just leaves her on red. he doesn't, like, he goes through all of this trying to take the photos, doesn't know how to reply. And we see him in the morning and he sends a text, or he doesn't send it. He types it up and is staring at it and thankfully does not press send. And it just says, "Many thanks. Really nice breasts." If I got that in response to a tit pic, I would never speak to him again. That would be it. That would be it. That would be it. I couldn't, oh my God. Ugh. Anyway, really nice breasts. Oh my God. So he doesn't send it. He gets up and he goes downstairs, and we see his mom struggling to deal with the, oh, sorry guys, I'm getting a phone call interrupting me for my student loan. Get out of here, you guys. But his mother is trying to cope with this baby that was unexpected. This whole thing is so exhausting. Every time I see this sort of storyline, it just really underscores for me how correct I was in not having children. It is just not for me. And he's holding Joy and being really sweet with her, but she pukes on his shoulder. And this is a thing that just like doesn't actually get addressed by anybody until he is on his bike halfway to school with Eric. And I was just like, can somebody please notice and do something? Please, anybody? And it just, bleh, you know, I know that baby puke is just a fact of life. And I know that when I had all the puppies, I dealt with shit and poop and stuff in a more matter-of-fact way than I would have expected of myself, because I thought I would be so disgusted, and it is disgusting. But I just was like, well, got a deal, you know? But every time I see it in this sort of third-hand way, I'm just like, oh my God, oh, how do you live? And I really appreciate that the house is a complete disaster. There are dirty dishes on every surface. There's crumpled tissues everywhere. There's baskets of laundry. There's nappies hanging and drying. There is open pantry doors with like an empty pantry behind them. Cupboard doors standing open with hardly anything inside because everything's dirty and sitting out on the counters. This felt so very real to me. And I know Otis, and I am sure he is helping as much as he can. But the thing is, when there's like this kid to deal with and he is like going to school and everything, there's only so much headspace, somebody his age, like that I can reasonably expect of them to dedicate to something like keeping the house picked up. You know, I want to expect more, and probably I could, but this is such a massive transition that if he hadn't been that way already, expecting him to suddenly adapt is unfair. His mom, meanwhile, she's got some cabbage leaves pressed against her boobs because she's got a blocked duct. And we really get the sense in this scene that she is extremely frazzled. She has a job interview, and he is very much like, are you sure you should even be considering going back to work right now? And she like argues that she absolutely can, that she's got to stay on top of, you know, her life and basically trying to have it all. But she looks a mess in this scene, and you can just see her, the wear of not getting any sleep on her. Like, it's just so clear that you're not in the space for it right now. And I want her very much to find somebody to care for the kid, you know, give her some help. But I don't have a very clear idea of what their financial situation is and whether that's even something that they could afford. Whenever I see a person depicted as being like a writer with a big circulation who has been on television shows and stuff promoting their work, I assume that they're doing quite well financially. I don't know that to be true, though. And childcare is very expensive. I know from hearing from friends. It's so, and I understand why. It's a huge amount of work, and it's all day while people are at work. You know, when I say it's expensive, I'm not trying to say that people are being overcharged. I'm saying that it isn't worth it for a lot of people to have both parents out of the house, because it costs more to pay for childcare than the second parent would even be making in the first place. So I am just desperate for her to like hire somebody, and it's not mentioned. And that's the only thing that I really wanted was like, I understand if there's not a friend around or family around. She doesn't know who the father is, so she doesn't feel right in particularly asking anybody. But I wanted it to be like mentioned, can you hire somebody? Even if it's just for a couple hours a day, you don't need to pay a full-time sitter, but just have somebody come in to give you a bit of a breather so that you can get cleaned up, or you take the baby and they come in and clean up for you and just do some like dishes and fold laundry and make the beds and vacuum. And just that is such a huge help. And it's not mentioned as an option. So that's something that I'm like, I just want you to get there, like considering it, you know? So at this point we have, Otis going out and meeting Eric, and the two of them heading to their new school on their bikes. And I had forgotten that this was going to be an entirely new setting. And it's a really interesting vibe, because it's still like, it's called a college, but as I understand in the UK, college doesn't mean the same thing as it means here, right? It's so like, and this is halfway through the school year. So this is springtime. They are not starting an entire new school year. This is second semester. And first of all, the drive, the ride, I guess I should say, on their bikes, evidently takes a lot longer than they had anticipated. So they are starting to think maybe we're going to have to take the bus, which is going to be a very, very different experience for the two of them. And we cut over to, oh my God, I am forgetting her name. What is the name of the girl that's doing all the sex toy stuff, guys? Why can I not remember her name? I feel really bad. But she is testing Amy. Thank God. She's testing sex toys, and she's writing down like her ratings in a book. I love this so much. Eventually, she winds up sending a sex toy to Maeve with a rating, and she was like, this one was 5 stars, which was really funny. Ashleigh, it says, at least over here, I can't speak for the UK. We sometimes call secondary schools colleges, but sometimes third level education is also college. That is very confusing. Okay, noted. But yeah, so she is getting ready for her day, and our friends are riding their bikes and sort of talking about whether they are going to fit in, whether they're going to be nerds or not. And, you know, the kind of like energy they're bringing in is just, well, we've grown as people, we're more confident, and so it'll be great for us. Well, it turns out it's not even so much just that they have grown as people. It's that this campus is a completely different energy than any place else they've been. So Cavendish, as it is called, is a really welcoming and inclusive space. And everything about it feels like new agey, modern in terms of their approach to stuff. Lots of queer couples, lots of like outfits that do not fall into the gender binary. And you can just see how completely shocked Eric is, because on the way in, he was saying that he has sent some dick pics because he has been on Tinder, and there aren't any interesting queer people around, like close by, that he particularly finds attractive. So I am wondering if he's going to wind up finding somebody in this crowd after all. I love that Amy calls them crumpets. Oh, Amy is just the most precious. I love her so much. But yeah, the conversation that they have about dick pics, it is so funny. And I'm not going to get into it until later when the travesty happens. But it turns out, as they're like putting their bikes on racks and everything, here comes Otis's ex, whose name I always lose, Ruby. She almost runs over this girl who turns out is part of a group called the Coven, a group of 3 people who are evidently sort of like, I don't know if I want to say the top of the social stratus, because it really feels like they're trying not to have that be the thing they're doing, but they are definitely the ones that are sort of the welcome wagon and the face of the school to newbies. And it may be that they are at the top of the social pecking order, and it's just not evident quite yet in the season. But you don't really, when I say it in that way, it conjures a certain image of like the in crowd that I don't feel they're interested in. There's a whole like no gossiping policy where people have to put a coin in a jar in order to not gossip. Like it's like the swear jar kind of thing, you know? And it's so funny, you guys, because I absolutely love that energy, but giving up gossip would be so fucking hard. I know a lot of us fancy ourselves as being above gossip, and I would love to say that about me, but I am not. Gossip is just fun, especially because I am almost never involved in it. It's much, much more interesting when I have no stake in it. You know, I don't have to have anxiety about the outcome, whether people know about it. It's nothing to do with me. That's the best kind of gossip. And they're just like, I think that empowering people to say, hey, we don't gossip here, and making this a space where you can like take a stance against that and not seem like a party pooper, that's a great thing to be doing. But I just want to freely mention it would be really hard for me. And I'm really curious about the vibe that is going to continue to build with this school, because it seems, as of right now, like a bit of a utopia. You know, we've got the everybody being free to express themselves in their manner of dress, in their sexual relationships. We even have them be giving, like, literally being platformed to speak about things in front of a crowd. And there's folks listening and encouraging them and not being derisive about it. And, you know, there's a whole lot of just positive support. And there are even these like individual rooms that you can book out and have one-on-one meetings and set up little services and whatnot, which is really wonderful. I mean, all of this sounds so cool. And at one point there's a guy, like, because Otis has these pamphlets for his sex therapy that he wants to do, and he's distributing it, and somebody comes by and says, like, well, we're paper free, this campus. And then when Eric tosses them, another person comes up and is like, don't forget to recycle, and takes everything out and puts it in the recycle bin. And it's the sort of thing where, like, if you are a different type of person than, say, me, you could find this all suffocating. You would feel like it's very false, like the obsession about projecting the image of doing good is actually there to sort of camouflage the fact that maybe some of us are not great people, and we're just trying to distract from that. Something that unfortunately gets called virtue signaling. And I could understand having that sort of reaction, but to me, this is an ideal that I wish we could live up to. And I will freely admit I would probably have a difficult time adjusting to, even though it is what I would want to be. I imagine somebody coming up to me and saying, please remember to recycle, and fishing out stuff I had thrown away from the garbage and putting it in a recycle bin. And I would be mortified, like the way Eric is. And I might get defensive about it. I might get kind of like prickly over the fact that somebody had rightfully kind of called me out and I had been thoughtless and I felt bad. So I would lash out in response. I like to think I wouldn't, but and it's just a really interesting thing to see a place depicted on screen that has a lot of the energy that, like, when Rashawn and I were talking on an Unsober episode about creating the Unsober commune, this is like the sort of thing I would like. And there's rooms with like yoga and sound bathing. There's a silent disco. Like, this is rad as hell. This is exactly the kind of thing that I would want to do. But it takes a vigilance amongst the rest of the student body. And it takes a vigilance that doesn't come from a place of judgment. And it doesn't feel like it's coming from a place of judgment right now. It feels like really great. And the one oversight, it seems, is accessibility, because we have an issue later with Isaac's. He's on the elevator and it gets stuck. And this is something that he has evidently brought up before, and they have not replaced the elevator. So all this to say, like, this place looks really cool, and it's interesting to see the people who do not fit in, because Ruby has a really hard time. And I'll say that Ruby seems to attempt to connect with the Coven a little bit later, but the attempt that she makes, to me, reads as a girl who's used to being in the popular crew, attempting to connect with the popular crew at this school in a superficial way that they don't respond to, because that's not the reason that they are, that's not the way they connect to people. And she almost ran over one of them earlier, and she doesn't exactly apologize. And when they mention, like, this is so-and-so's favorite seat, she doesn't immediately vacate, which I will say, so what if it's their favorite seat? There's a part of me that was kind of like, are you really just asking her to move because you just like sitting here? Like, come on, guys. Just get over it. You get it when it's free, and it's not free. Whatever. But the fact that they just walked away, I think that's probably like the most rejected she's ever been socially. And then, of course, we have Adam's father, Mr. Groff, who both he and Ruby wind up eating their lunches in the toilets. Can I just say, you guys, I have been blessed, I might say. I hesitate to use that word. I am somebody who has never minded being alone. I have been in romantic relationships steadily in life. So when I say being alone, I do not mean like being single, because evidently, based on my behavior, I do not like being single. That's a whole other conversation. But being physically alone has never bothered me. I have gone to events alone. I have eaten at restaurants alone and thought nothing of it. And this scene where they can't find anybody to sit with, and so they wind up eating in the bathroom. Oh my God, I could literally never. I would just go outside, sit in the grass, and read something on your phone and eat your sandwich. Why are you doing this? Coming into, like, it just emphasizes your isolation, and, by the way, is very unsanitary to be, like, eating in there. But it just felt to me like there are other options. You know that, right? Like, they acted as if there's nobody to sit with me, then I may as well be dead. And I was just like, can't relate. I was an only child, and maybe that's a big part of it, but I think Ruby's an only child too, if I'm not mistaken. And it would be lonesome maybe to be surrounded by people who are friends and this whole community and not be connecting with anybody. I'm not trying to say that it wouldn't bother me at all in this situation, but I'm saying that I would absolutely never even think to just go eat in a bathroom stall by myself. That just would not even enter my mind. But anyway, so yeah, this, we have the orientation around the school, and we are with Jackson and what is her name? Viv, I think. And Viv is really struggling to sort of adjust to we're all friends here and we all want the best for each other. And we all think that if we are all doing well, then we're headed in the right direction and it doesn't matter who's on top. Viv likes everything to be very specifically segmented into like best and worst, top of class. And she is having a hard time with the approach that they are taking here. And we get also a storyline with, oh God, what is the non-binary character's name? Cal. Cal is taking tea. I don't know if they're taking it internally, like if they're getting shots as well. They are using a testosterone gel, and I'm not sure, you know, when it comes to hormone treatments, if that's like a supplemental thing or if that is the main delivery of testosterone that they're using. But Cal is describing at the beginning of the episode the changes that this is having on their body. Their voice is slightly deeper. They're growing facial hair. Eyebrows are getting thicker, all this sort of thing. And it turns out that their sex drive is completely out of control, which I have heard from a couple friends of mine who are on T, that this is a huge issue. I remember a friend of mine saying that they were having sexual thoughts about the copy machine at their office job, and they had to like take a moment and be like, I need to get a hold of myself. But Cal's whole thing is just all day being extremely turned on by anything that is suggestive of like a naked body, whether or not it is actually an attractive description or portrayal of a naked body. Like later on, they are talking to Otis and they're like, I had an orgasm looking at your picture. It is not a sexy picture, like profoundly unsexy, actually. I don't know why it happened. What the fuck? And Otis is like, that sounds like being a teenage boy. So it is, you know, having a spontaneous orgasm. I understand that that may be distressing because it feels out of your control. And while uncommon, they're not unheard of. But try to just ride the wave, get to know your body, and see this like as an opportunity. And I was fascinated at the concept of having a spontaneous orgasm. Like, I could see how uncomfortable it would be for that to be outside of your control, for that to just happen when you are standing in and amongst people, not intending for it. Yeah, you don't want to feel like you are so totally out of control of yourself, you know? But there is a part of me that was like, man, I'm very envious, actually. That sounds like kind of dope. But their journey on this, the hormone changes and everything, is really interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of that. I find hormones and the concept of them so fascinating because they control our whole lives, and they control so much about the world and how we see it, but we pretend that we are in control of it, and it's just like an accident of our bodies and the ways in which our bodies respond to things. And I wish that human beings as a whole were more respectful of the science behind the way that we behave, the way that we feel all the time. Like, there are so many folks who are only just finally getting on the train of like, oh, depression is a physical disability. It is not just like mental health. Your body is not producing the kinds of hormones that are needed to keep you on an even keel. That's a physical problem. And so many people have just treated that as if it's you not trying hard enough to be cheerful. And it's just ludicrous. And, you know, seeing that a person that was presenting female can simply like take a certain hormone and begin to demonstrate masculine traits like facial hair, like over the course of a couple of weeks, that should be evidence that gender as we see it is sort of meaningless, you know, that things can change. I mean, even a woman who is cis and presents very feminine, once she goes through menopause, many times will begin to develop more male characteristics because the estrogen level in your body drops after menopause. And it's just such a bizarre thing that we're really attached to, like, no, women are like this and men are like this. And it's like, well, one, there are women with facial hair, lots actually, you know, whether it's simply because that is the way their hormones react, or if they have something like polycystic ovarian syndrome, you know, who knows? But also, that could change at the drop of a hat. And we just really behave as if it's all etched in stone. And it's just silly. Like, no, it's not. Everything is so malleable. And I don't understand why that scares us so much. I feel like it should be freeing, if anything, you know? And I understand, like, as a cis woman who presents the way that I identify, I don't have to worry about a lot of the judgments on this stuff. So I'm coming from a place of extreme privilege talking about this, but that seems to be the type that gets offended, are cis people. And like, for what reason? Why are you so worried? What do you think this says about you? Are you concerned? Like, you know, I don't understand it. So, sorry, Ashleigh says there was literally a Grey's Anatomy episode about that, which completely killed any future interest I could ever have. The actor was having orgasms mid-conversation with her dad. Oh my God. Oh my God. Ashleigh, I hate that so much. That's horrible. Okay, Abby. Abby is the name of the person with the pink pigtails. They're wearing this like belted quilted jacket that looks straight out of like 1986. There is a black girl with a hearing aid. Can we just take a pause here? This girl is so unbelievably pretty. I was constantly distracted when she was on screen. She has a perfectly symmetrical face. She has her hair in this absolutely flawless, like, pineapple puff. Her skin is glowing. I mean, like, she's got like that glass skin kind of complexion. And her features are perfectly proportioned to her face. She is so gorgeous. I just kept being like, oh my God. Every time that she was on screen, I was just like, let's just let the camera linger on her for a second. She is so pretty. I get this way sometimes with Eric also, because he just has this bone structure, and the way that he does his eye makeup and his highlighter, there will be times where I'm just like, can we just sit on his face, please, for a moment? Because wow, look at him with the eyelashes when he puts those on. I mean, ugh, disgusting. Aisha is the character's name. Thank you, Ashleigh. Alexandra James. Okay. I don't think I've ever seen her before. But I really liked the little nod to the fact that at one point Eric covers his mouth when he's talking, and she relies on lip reading a lot, it turns out. So when he does that, she can't tell what he said. And he's just like, oh, sorry. I'll be honest, I hadn't even noticed about the hearing aid until that moment when she points out, like, please don't cover your mouth. And I was like, oh, because she had not spoken that many times by that point. And so the couple times she did, I just thought that she had like an accent. But I think it's just meant to be that she has she's somebody who is partially deaf speaking, and so that can influence the way that your voice sounds. So anyway, the whole like main thrust of this episode, there are two main things that are going on. Actually, I'll say three. So first thing is Maeve and her writing teacher, who is played by what's his face, who, I'm so sorry everybody, but from what's his name, Dan Levy. He plays a writer who has been published and is like thrown a lot of accolades, and he's their like professor and also potential mentor. And the whole like conceit of this program is that somebody will be selected to be mentored, and they almost always get published. And he seems to like either know how to tap great talent, or he just has such great influence that he gets people on their way. But a lot of the students in this class are like ready to completely kiss his ass. And Maeve isn't really doing that, and seems to have a little bit more frankness in the way she talks to him. She's not disrespectful at all, but she says that the book, which another student describes as his masterpiece, she's like, it was fine. I didn't like it as much as your other one, which was like Night Stories or something. And he's impressed that she even read it, because apparently it's one of the works of his that kind of is less known. And he has a lot to say about how, like, if you come late, I won't let you in. I think that writing should cost you something, and that was really painful for me to write. Her phone rings and he throws it out the window. He's really doing a lot of the performing of like an extreme professor. And instead of being intimidated by it, Maeve just seems kind of bored of the posturing, which I feel I see really why that would kind of be tiresome, you know? And oh no, Ashleigh says, I can't see him anymore without thinking of the mess that was The Idol. He was in that. Do not get me started. You guys, The Idol, I didn't watch it, but I read a lengthy article about the way that story was destroyed, and the way that Euphoria as a show, also by the same director, I think, was stolen basically from another writer. Like, they completely plagiarized her work. The whole thing is such a mess. Like, that director seems like a real piece of shit. But anyway, this thing with Maeve, like, he says that he is looking forward to seeing her writing, and there's just a real pressure there because of that. So we'll see how that goes for her. But in the end, her and Otis have phone sex, so we've got that going for us. She does, unfortunately, mention that she's meeting up with this guy Tyrone and going out, and that he's smart and funny, and Otis is clearly a little threatened. It's like, this guy might not even be straight, Otis. You don't know that he's even a threat in this sense. But Maeve, I got a feeling from the way she smirked, I felt like she knew it was going to bother Otis a little bit, and she could have disabused him of that, and she didn't. So I'm not sure if that was because she was just like, that's his problem to deal with, or if she was trying to get back at him a tiny bit for the fact that he like left her on red all day. I don't know. But that's where things leave with them. The other one that's sort of a main thing is what's going on with Jean. She goes to her job interview. She leaves her baby with like a receptionist or something, but the baby starts crying and has to be brought in to the interview. So she's like nursing while she's talking to the person who's like the head of the station. It's a radio show that they're interviewing her about. And they're actually really like receptive. They're not judging her about the baby interrupting things, but they do want her to start immediately, which she was not realizing. And she says she can start this week, but she is in no shape to do that. It's so obvious that she's barely hanging on. And yet, unclear if it's like a financial pressure or if it's an identity thing that she doesn't know who she is when she's not career woman. But she seems to really feel like she's got to take this opportunity when she can. And, you know, they say basically, we're looking to fill this slot right now. And if you can't, that's fine. We'll keep you in mind for something in the future, which, you know, that whole vague thing, it's basically as good as having your resume thrown in the trash. And Jean takes the job, but there's a thing later. Otis comes home after school and she's like, "Where's Joy?" And he's like, "Mom, I just got home. What do you mean?" And she starts racing through the house and she finds Joy in her crib in her room and is like, "Oh, I must have put her down to sleep. I completely forgot." And she like waves it off like, "Oh, ha ha, no big deal." But Otis is clearly disturbed by this. Like, she utterly forgot what she did with her child. Like, that's a really big brain fart. And there can be a lot of things that happen to your brain postpartum. You know, not just postpartum depression, although that is a major issue as well. And postpartum depression can go on for literally years, or it can suddenly hit you over a year after giving birth. A lot of people think that it's only immediately after the birth, and that's not necessarily what happens. And this is something that's like so big a part of why reproductive rights are so crucial. We behave as if giving birth is not risky anymore. And it is risky physically, and it also has huge changes on the body that can last forever. So I'm really interested to see where we're going with this and what it turns out is happening with her, because she seems like a different person. And I think Otis is just feeling unmoored by that, you know? We touch base briefly with Adam, who has decided not to go back to school, and he's sort of like figuring out what he wants to do. I love his mom just being like, "Dude, look, school isn't for everybody. I respect that you don't want to go back, but you can't just sit here eating cereal and looking at pictures of your ex-boyfriend. You've got to fucking figure something out." And it looks like he's maybe going to be interested in farming. I sort of wish that he would pursue school for like veterinary stuff. I don't know. You know, he's just very good with animals. Maybe something more like animal husbandry, like on a farm, would be better. But I felt like that was really a potential thing for him, and I would like him to pursue that. He could even be an animal trainer. If he really enjoyed doing that, he could take that on for other people, because plenty of people would like their animals trained, but they don't have time to do that because it's an engrossing project. I speak from his experience on this. But his father stops by and didn't know that Adam had dropped out. And is like, "Why didn't he tell me?" And his wife is like, "'Cause he's afraid of you. Like, I get that you want things to be repaired between the two of you, but you're going to have to actually reach out to him. You know, you can't just keep talking to me and getting every piece of information secondhand." And the other major thing, so we've got a brief check-in with Amy, who gets stuck on the lift with Isaac, and she says something about how she's taking art to overcome trauma, and then asks Isaac if he's doing that too because he's traumatized because of his disability, and he's like, "Thanks for being super ableist." And I like the scene because Amy is immediately like, "I said the wrong thing, didn't I?" and feels regretful, but Isaac does not try to comfort her in her regret and be like, "Oh, it's fine. I know you didn't mean anything." He's irritated because that was a thoughtless thing to say. And she's sad because she doesn't quite know what she said wrong. And each of them, it's valid to feel the way they each feel, you know? It's hard when you don't understand the microaggressions that certain, like, demographics put up with all the time. It's easy to get offended in response to them being offended, instead of stepping back and thinking like, maybe I'm the fuck up here. And I know a lot of folks can get irritated because they feel as if like, "Oh, I never know what to say. It seems like you can't say anything without somebody." But it's like, if you offended somebody, all you need to do is like apologize, take a step back, and then maybe look into why what you said wasn't the best choice. And there are ways to like research. You could just literally go into Google and type in ableism and read about like some of the common ways that language can trip you up in the way that you talk about people who have disabilities and the assumptions that you make. And that can be really enlightening. Also, joining like, if you are in different social media platforms, if you're on Facebook, joining pages, if you're on Instagram, following certain hashtags and stuff, on TikTok as well, going to those communities and just watching videos or reading posts without interacting, make it a policy that you don't reply to things or don't ask questions. You simply observe and read and don't ask for their labor in answering your questions. You can learn so much that way. And it can be really like difficult sometimes to restrain yourself from asking questions that you feel are valid. But this was something that I did a few years ago, is I followed a ton of pages about Black activism and stuff. And there were things that were being mocked in the comments that I did. And I felt a way about it. I was just like, but I don't mean anything by it. Why are they making fun of this? And gradually coming to understand why they feel the way that they do and how often it is a thing that well-meaning white people do without thinking through that it's essentially like a useless gesture that means nothing. And I came around to seeing how like it may not be actually damaging, but it's certainly not helpful, and it is centering me in a conversation when I'm not the point. And that's stuff that's, you know, it takes time to really understand, and you've got to be able to like be self-aware and willing to accept that criticism, even when you know that your intentions are good. Sometimes what you do doesn't help. So then we have our main thing going on, which is that Otis is trying to start this, what do you call it? What's the word I want? I'm trying to think of he keeps calling it like a, oh my God, what am I trying to find? Oh, thank you. Ashleigh says clinic. And when I think of clinic, I think of either obviously like a physical clinic, like coming in for a checkup, or I think of a sort of almost a retreat, like an intensive, where you spend several days like studying something very specifically. So the way he is talking about it, it's just about a sort of therapy. But he keeps saying clinic, and I kept thinking that he meant one particular event when he's just trying to set up the like, you know, schedule of I come to this table every day and you can come see me. And it's really funny because he's finally become reconciled to the fact that he wants to do this kind of therapy and that he feels he's good at it and is willing to put himself out there in a much more public way. And he finds out that somebody is already here, somebody named O, who he knows. Now, I don't remember O. If anybody wants to remind me of who this person is, Otis is really feeling like she has stolen his idea and is stepping on his territory. And it's kind of sad because, like, I think I get what's happening here is that Otis took a long time to finally admit that he likes doing this and wants to continue doing it. And he grew secure in his identity with that and decided to really reach out and embrace it. And now here comes somebody who's got the same thing going on, but better, one could argue, because she has posted lots of videos, she has lots of followers, and she has a full schedule that people have to make appointments for, and she's booked out for like 4 days. So he comes in and tries to tell her that she needs to stop doing what she's doing because he's here now, which is just so absurd And I really did appreciate that she doesn't even entertain that for a moment. And it's just like, no, I was already here. I don't need to do anything. You can do what you want. You can keep doing your thing, but I'm certainly not just going to stop. And it's really funny because like he goes to speak to her about it, and she engages him in a conversation about what's happening with him and Maeve, with him and the baby. Like all of this is a conversation that she really navigates well and points out some things in a way that's astute. And he even like later on admits that she was probably right about the dick pic thing and him feeling really vulnerable, considering that he doesn't know if Maeve is going to come back. But in the moment, he's super resistant. And it's like she's doing a bit of a different thing, I think, than what Otis wants to do. And I just wish that he could see that she is good at this as well, and that it's not a competition. But it's really difficult when you do a thing and someone shows up and does it's really hard to not compare yourself. Like, it's just instinct, of course you do. Especially in a school that's like small enough that you know everybody else, and it's just going to be a natural thing that other people will compare you. Like, how do you resist, But he is really rude to her. And so what he decides to do is like kind of try to declare war and go up on this platform where people talk about issues that are important to them, and attempts to explain that he is a sex therapist in the worst possible way, so that Eric eventually just stands up and goes, "For God's sake, Otis, just tell them you are a sex therapist." And I was like, thank you. Oh my God. Like, it was so painful. And he has his phone that he links into the projector. And right, guys, we all knew the moment that he does that, I'm just like, oh no. Oh God, we're about to have his dick all over the screen. And I have got to give this show so much credit for the fact that they are willing to show dicks. Like, I just really appreciate, and it's a flaccid, uncircumcised dick too, which is just like, that's a very underrepresented demographic of dick on TV. And everybody like, it's just like, oh dude. And he is so embarrassed, but he's trying to still like cover and keep talking. Eventually somebody goes up and like they unhook the projector, but I'm just like, dude, you could just pull the cord out of your phone. Why don't you just do that? But then Bluetooth connects, I guess. So I guess that's just too bad. And I love when he runs off and Eric catches up with him, and he's like, Eric says, "It's really weird. Nobody's even saying anything mean. They just feel really sorry for you." But then Eric rightfully zeroes in on what was with those dick pics. You didn't send those, right? Because like, that is not what she's looking for, dude, at all. So yeah, this is just, oh my God, you guys, it was agony. It was such agony. Everybody has seen his dick now. Bless him. So, but it is the thing that leads, Cal to coming and speaking with him. And Cal is just like, hey, everybody saw your dick, and I figured I wasn't going to be getting any judgment from you about things after what you just went through. And I was like, yeah, I could see that being a draw. Just like we've crossed to the other side of the humiliation valley. I'm sorry, I'm looking at this scene here where the coven is asking for Ruby to move, and how she just like can't get them to sit with her. And I think that it's just her vibe. She's asking like, "I like your jacket." I don't know. I can't decide if she fucked up in the way she reached out to them, or if it was just, she almost ran one of them over. Maybe that's all there is to it. I was trying to read into that scene just now a little bit more to see if I was missing something, but I think that's about it. I also just want to mention too, overall, how much I love that Eric has found a school that is so receptive and welcoming that he can be so completely himself that he's able to go even further with his makeup and everything coming to school. And we get one scene with him and his mother where she is saying, like, our preacher wanted to know why you're the only one in our family who hasn't been baptized. And he evidently has been pretty resistant to it, but he says he'll think about it, which she seems really happy about. And it's the sort of thing that's like, it's difficult for me to understand because I'm not a believer, and I don't, like, for me, even though I grew up with a father who wanted me very much to, like, convert and declare for Christ, he never tried to, like, push me into a baptism or anything like that. He seemed very much aware. I was only going because he was making me, and it was not something that resonated with me, but he did it for as long as he was allowed, basically, until I was 18. And then I could just do what I wanted because I was legally an adult. He really saw that as, like, the point where he could stop pushing me. And if he had asked, it would not have entered my head to just let myself be baptized because he wanted it, because I don't believe it, so what does it matter? Do you know what I mean? There's a line in a Sex and the City episode where Miranda gets pregnant and Steve wants their kid to be baptized. And she says, but I don't believe in it. And he says, if you don't believe, it's just water on the kid's head. And it's the sort of thing where I'm like, I understand that that's technically true, but it has meaning to you, though. And by agreeing, I am endorsing what you believe. And it's a lie, you know? So whether or not I think that it has the significance you think it does isn't really the issue at hand. And it's tough because, like, Eric clearly does have faith. It seems like he's unclear where he stands with the church as of right now, though. So I'll be interested to see where things go with him. And I feel sad because of him and Adam breaking up, because they really were adorable together. But Adam definitely has some shit that he needs to work through. Eric is just in a completely different place mentally. And Adam's just, he has so much more baggage, you know? Sorry, Ashleigh says, well, for a lot of people, it's equally cultural, not just religious. I know here the majority of Catholics are cultural Catholics more than anything else. I guess I just, like, when you're baptized as a baby, is that a different, like, because they're wanting him to be baptized, and he's like, I don't want to say a grown adult, because he's supposed to be only like 17 maybe, but it just feels like it's a different thing choosing that as a grown-up. I don't know. And, you know, this may just be my baggage, but I have never been confident enough in any particular direction to be willing to, like, take a step like that. And I'm fine with that. It doesn't feel like anything's really missing from my life because of that. But it feels to me like Eric seems to think there's something missing. So anyway, I really, really liked this episode, though. This was a really good one. I was so engrossed, and it was so funny. Oh my God, it was really, really funny. So I am really, really looking forward to the next one. I'm going to be doing one of these a week, so it's going to be on Tuesdays. So hope you guys can join me if you're listening for the next live. And until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.